Blog Talk Radio.
Fulfill Radio, a voice you can trust. Broadcasting live presents Two Guys and a Bible with Don Preston and William Bell. Join us each week at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central as we bring you exciting, sound, challenging, and comforting messages regarding the end times. Thank you for tuning in today. Don Preston is the founder of Preterist Research Institute, or PRI. Don is a prolific author, having written and published 19 books, a host of audio and DVD studies, and is a debater and defender of the full preterist view. His websites are BibleProphecy.com, Eschatology.org, and DonKPreston.com. William Bell is the founder of AllThingsFulfilled.com Ministries and has a website bearing the same name, and has authored 3 books, audios, and DVDs. He has published hundreds of articles and recordings. And now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Two Guys and a Bible broadcast with Don Preston and William Bell. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Two Guys in the Bible right here on Fulfill Radio, a voice you can trust. I am William Bell, and with me is my illustrious co-host, Dr. Don Preston. Don, how are you today? What's going on in your world? I know you were about to tell me some things about Lance and his surgery, so why don't you inform us a little bit about that and other things that are happening?
All right. Well, glad to. Lance, our son, he's already had 2 hernia surgeries, and today he was having his 3rd one, and as it turned out, he had 4 separate hernias that they have had to try to correct. But he has, I just spoke to my wife about, 4 or 5 minutes before coming on air, and he's been in recovery for well over 2 hours. They can't seem to get him woke up, and his blood oxygen levels are very, very low, and his blood sugar is very, very high. And so they're having some difficulty getting him kind of back up on his feet where he's, fully cognizant, fully aware, and functioning and what have you. So needless to say, I'm a little concerned about that. He had a coloscopy, a scope, last week, and his blood oxygen level got very, very low. The doctor said it was dangerously low. There didn't seem to be any reason for it, and once they got him on oxygen, then he just snapped right out of it and has been just fine since then. But now, in the recovery room, obviously they've got him on oxygen, but they can't seem to get his blood oxygen, up to where it ought to be. And so, needless to say, we're a little bit concerned about that. He's very much overweight. He's diabetic. And so, he has some things going against him, and we don't know how much those things are contributing to the issues there in the recovery room. But hopefully they'll be able to get him awake and functioning again very, very soon. But other than that, it's been a very productive week so far. Been having... as is usual, been having lots of exchanges on Facebook, and, you just stand amazed at how the enemies of the truth, and I mean, I hate to express it like that, but when people start making the so-called arguments that they're making on there, and they call themselves logical, they call themselves serious Bible students, and yet the holes in their argumentation, the holes in their logic, are big enough to drive 2 semis side by side through, then they really are, they're enemies of the truth. They're willingly rejecting what anyone can see is obviously the truth and their own self-contradictions. And when you point those self-contradictions out, and all they do is resort to vulgarity, literally vulgarity. Now, mind you, folks, these are supposed to be Christians, okay? And yet yesterday, when I had exposed the absolute, utter self-contradiction of this one younger guy, he resorted to just gross vulgarity. And, of course, I responded by pointing out, well, in all of my years of controversy and debate, it's been my experience that when someone cannot answer your arguments, they resort to name-calling and even vulgarity, such as demonstrated by you. And, I mean, it's just really, really sad that you witness stuff like that on the part of people who claim to be Christians. And of course, their arrogance and their condescension, insulting my knowledge or lack thereof of the Greek. And yet, even though I'm not a professional student of the Greek, it was so easy to expose the self-contradictions and the utter fallacy of their arguments from the Greek, to demonstrate that their arguments are exposed and falsified by all of the translations. And so the claim that they're making about the Greek, not supported by any English translation, and it's not supported even by their own theology. And when I kept pointing it out, all they could do was continue to insult me, to use vulgarities, and then today they changed the subject. all of a sudden, they want to talk about something totally different, which is typical. So anyway, as I posted at the end of a couple of different of those exchanges in which this one young man had to acknowledge what I said. Now, he tried extremely hard to phrase his admission in such a way that I didn't detect it, but I did. I've been at this polemical exchange for more than a day, and I can see through admissions pretty easily. And so, as I posted in response when he had basically surrendered his entire argument, I said, I really, really appreciate you surrendering your entire argument. This has been a very, very productive day. Which, I might add, didn't go over real well with him.
I'm sure of that. I'm very, sorry to hear about Lance and the challenges he's having with his health in the hospital, and I hope that, he recovers soon. And especially with the other complications that he has, it sounds pretty serious, and I'm sure that you all are concerned and watching over that situation very carefully. So I will
absolutely
continue to pray for him that he can return to some stable condition very quickly, and get that issue resolved, and that he gets his health in check as much as he possibly can. Leora has been challenged a little bit. She's having some problems with her hip, and it's making it difficult to, move about a little bit. And even though she's been on her feet pretty much all day today, working in the kitchen, preparing for holiday and all of those things. So she's been doing fine with that and doing better. But, the last couple of days she's had some challenges with that, and, just stiffening up when she sits down or when she becomes immobile, but as long as she's moving about, it's okay. So,
we certainly hope she gets to feel it. Yeah, well, we appreciate your prayers for Lance. He, as I said, he's overweight. Although I got to give him credit. Earlier in the year, he lost close to 80 pounds
by
really
being
diligent. Oh, I'm telling you. He was looking so much better, and he was obviously feeling better. He was not having any difficulty with his blood sugar, and keeping his diabetes under control. Over the last month or so, he's been getting lax with it again. He started gaining some more weight back, and he's just a big kid, as you know. I mean, he's a good-sized guy, big boned, and so when he gets to weighing, as he did. He got to weighing 250 or 350, 360. So he got way up there, and obviously that's not good for your joints. It's not good for your body. It's not good for anything. And so we were extremely proud of him when he lost so much weight. And again, he was feeling so much better. And now all of a sudden, over the last month or so, he's let himself go a little bit again. And now he hadn't gotten back up to where he was weight-wise, and that's good. But he has been experiencing these issues with his blood sugar. And bless his heart, he doesn't always use the very best of wisdom. I mean, he's typical in many, many ways. Knowing he had to go in for surgery today, knowing he wasn't supposed to eat anything after midnight, well, he decided to have a great big chocolate brownie and a pint of ice cream.
Oh, no.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's diabetic, for crying out loud. He knows he's not supposed to do that. But he said he hadn't been eating hardly any sugar, so he thought he could indulge. Well, needless to say, he gets to the hospital this morning, and his blood sugar was 390. And they just told him, they said, we're not going to operate on you until your blood sugar gets down to 220, 225. It's just too dangerous. And they watched over him, they medicated him and what have you, and they finally got it down to an acceptable range, and they operated, and now we're having this difficulty with him. And, he's just got some struggles to go through here. We just hope and pray that, like I said, and as you mentioned, they can get a handle on it. And, Jan has been right there with him, of course. With the COVID situation, they wouldn't let both of us be there at all, or I would have been there as well. But they allowed Jan to be there and to be with him. She's in recovery with him now. But it's kind of a scary situation. There's no doubt about it. And the good thing about it is it's a good hospital here, and we feel like he's in pretty good hands. And so hopefully over the next hour or so, by the time this program is over, then we will have some kind of word that he is improving, hopefully dramatically. I'll be calling Jan the minute that we get off of the program this evening. So anyway, that's kind of what's going on in our world coming up on Christmas. And I know that you join with me in wishing our audience a very, very Merry Christmas. Hope you have a wonderful, safe time. William, I don't know if you got your family coming in there. I don't know what the COVID restrictions are. Don't know if you'd be honoring them or not. Anyway,
I won't. As far as the family's coming, we do have. Everybody's coming to our house this season, and we are. That's what I said. Leora's been in the kitchen for 12 hours a day, and she's been cooking what appears to me for a week, and still is not done. And so I know that a lot's going to go on, and we just hope and pray that everybody's safe. And but we're going to carry on and see how things go from that perspective. And just be as cautious as we can, but at the same time, hey, this is family, and we're going to be family, and that's just the way it is.
Well, we understand that, and we would normally be getting together to some extent anyway, but we would have been going over to Bentonville, Arkansas, but Benton County, where Danelle and Corey live, is one of the hottest infection spots in all of Arkansas. And their mortality rate is one of the highest in Arkansas. And Danelle's mother-in-law and father-in-law have COVID, and some of the rest of the family have already been exposed to them. And so we're just thinking, probably best not to take ourselves over there into the midst of that. And we've got our Christmas tree up, and we're going to enjoy Christmas alone. Lance will be here, Lord willing, if he is out of the hospital tonight or in the morning at the latest. And so we will have 3 people here for our Christmas. But you know what? As long as everyone is healthy, that's okay.
Yeah, I do get it, and I understand. You were talking about some of the things that happened on Facebook. I kind of chimed in on one of those arguments that you were having with them, one of those discussions you were having with them. And you had already made, pretty much the points, and I just added a little bit to it. And I knew, as you say, they were going to, come back with, all kind of slanderous remarks and ridiculous diversions, et cetera, which, in fact, they did. And I haven't checked recently, but I know that, from the standpoint of the time that I responded, they made no real attempt to address the issues. But what has been interesting, I shared with you concerning the debate that was held.
I was going to ask you to share with us about that. Yes.
Yeah. Well, at this point, I've been able to get, I think, one full day, the first full day of speeches sent to me, and the first affirmative and negative speech of the second day. I'm still waiting on 2 more files to come through. But what has happened is I noticed in one of the speeches, I think it was maybe the second or the last speech of the second day, that it was, these speeches should have been 30 minutes. That's what we agreed on, 30-minute speeches for each person. And I know on one speech, my speech was only 12 minutes and 58 seconds. Wow. And my opponent's speech, who was, I think, I think it was in the affirmative on that day, but I can't remember. But his speech was like 23 minutes. So, and I know there was some introduction at the, an announcer at the beginning of his speech. So I'm going to say at least his speech was somewhere around 20 minutes. But I don't know whether the speech had been cut to 20 minutes. But even then, if it were cut to 20 minutes, that means 7 minutes were chopped off of my speech. And I know I had way more material than would cause me to run out of material during that discussion, because, it's a matter of me just trying to get it all in during the time that I have. So I didn't run out of material. I know that he was reading prepared scripts, and so it was more likely that his speech might have been less than the time, and I think I noticed 2 of his speeches there. But even then, even if his material was cut off, I'm not satisfied with that. I'm not pleased with that, because I want all of his material presented, and I want all of my material presented. And another speech that I actually sent you a part of was when that speech got cut early as well. And what they did was actually, and this could have been just an editing error, but he took 4 minutes of that speech and tacked it on to the end, which made me duplicate what I was saying twice, because he just rolled part of the tape. And I actually cut the 8 minutes off of that speech and posted it. I posted it on YouTube. I didn't post it listed because I wanted to put it in the eschatology forum that Solomon has, so that those guys who were more familiar with the debate could see it. And then I called that to their attention, and I think I sent you a copy of it as well. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it.
Is that the one on the? Yeah, is that the one on the days of Noah?
No, that's not the one on the days of Noah. I think I was dealing with 1 Corinthians 1:7-8 and some other, 1 Corinthians 13 and maybe some other points in that. No, I haven't seen it. Yeah, but when in that last response that that you sent to me, I responded to it, and I thought that I put the YouTube link in there so that you could see what happened. Now, it could be the case that I didn't hit the send button. That happens a lot in my old age, okay? And so I'll go back and look to see if that has, if I actually sent it. But
I just don't remember seeing a link to a YouTube. So I'll double check though.
Okay. And so there was another speech when they first changed the time, and I had no knowledge of it, of the speech from 30 minutes to 20 minutes. I didn't know that. It was either 20 or 15 minutes, but I know when they told me, it must have been 15 minutes in that speech. And then they told me while I was, after I had responded some of the other guys' arguments, I was ready to get into my affirmative material again. We were just responding to some of his arguments and refuting those, and then I was going to get into, and as soon as I was starting on my affirmative material, they cut cut me off, saying, "Okay, that's the end. We're only doing 15 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever it was." And so I didn't even know that they had changed the time in the middle of the debate. And so I thought that was bad. And I protested against that enough to where we put the speeches back to what they were originally agreed upon before we started the debate. And I still ended up with some shortened speeches somewhere that were, probably the cause of the editor not giving me all the information, or someone, cut my speech and cut out some of the material. So I'm waiting on those last two files to come in so I can determine what has been eliminated and what has not. And hopefully I'll find the material that that should be a part of those other speeches that are not there. So that's why I withheld posting anything or publishing anything at this point, because I'm still waiting on some of that information. On the other hand, some of the good news that has come out of that is word about the debate has gotten around, and it's gotten as far east as Kenya so far. I got an email from a gentleman actually today, I think early this morning or earlier today, and he was expressing his appreciation. He told me that he was a former pre-trib guy, that he had studied himself out of that as a result of listening to videos and from the channel, and of course I'm sure some of your material as well. He's new to he's a Pentecostal, but he's new in terms of only being in for about a year, but at least he's perceived that much in terms of futurism being in the era, and is now looking for someone. There was another person who used to be on the live videos when I did them a couple of years ago when I was doing live streaming on Facebook. There was a person from Kenya who was a Seventh-day Adventist who had begun to study, and we don't know whether she actually came all the way, but I know that she was being convinced at the time. So I told him that was the only person that I knew from Kenya at the time, and I would see if I could put him in touch, because he's now trying to find someone to have a little fellowship with, because he said, well, I'm the only person that I know here who understands this, or who is, is believing this, and I'm looking for some support. But the other thing that he said was, he sent me an email, and he said that after he heard about the Ghana debate, it encouraged him, because it means that something could be worked out to bring me to East Africa, God willing. And so he understands that, it would probably be a huge undertaking, but he's willing to, check into it to see what can be done. And I think that in time, as more and more people hear it or hear about it, it's probably going to open some more doors. So I'm really excited, over the fact that that debate opportunity may open up some more doors in Africa and other places. And of course, I've heard from a few other places outside of Africa as well concerning the debate.
That's absolutely wonderful. Yeah. Well, as has always been the case, it's really kind of interesting. Down through the years, you and I both have had people, almost attack us. Well, why do you do these debates? You don't really think debates do any good? And my response to that invariably is, well, no, I don't think it. I know it, because as a matter of fact, a week and a half ago, I got a private message from someone who had just watched my debate, or my two debates with Dr. Michael Brown. Now, of course, Dr. Michael Brown is a very noted premillennialist. He says he's not a dispensationalist, but he's certainly a first cousin to it. But this individual told me that they had been a follower of Dr. Brown for years, but that those two debates that I had with him, this is a woman, and said those two debates turned her head around on her shoulder and made her realize that her following of Dr. Brown was misguided, that he was not teaching the truth after all, and that preterism has the higher ground. And so she and I have corresponded a little bit ever since then, and she is very excited about what she is learning. And I have received any number of similar comments from people as a direct result of the debates with Dr. Brown. And with Wallace from Salt Lake City that I had a few years back, and with the debates that I've had with different people down through time, I still hear from people. I still hear from people about my debates with Thomas Ice, and about how those debates changed their life and caused them to be full preterists. So when people scoff at the idea of debates and say it's just a waste of time, I say with all due respect, now, believe me, and you know my attitude toward this, you have the same attitude. I don't like to debate anyone who's going to do nothing but engage in name-calling, impugning of integrity, questioning of our standing before the Lord, going to get up and prance around and dance around and just try to put on a show instead of making substantive arguments. You and I both, unfortunately, have had some of those debates, and we didn't like it.
Absolutely.
But the point of fact is, we don't willingly enter into debates with people that we know are dishonorable, that we know are liars. I've had people that have proven themselves to be some of the most dishonorable, disreputable, vulgar and obscene individuals. And they have challenged me to debate over and over and over again. And I've just simply told them, no, I don't debate dishonorable people when I know about them. And you're in the top 10 of that list, by the way. So it's not happening. And, of course, they go about bragging, Don Preston, the great, the great debater, supposedly. He'll debate anybody but me. Well, if you were to manifest some kind of decorum, some kind of integrity, some kind of just basic human courtesy, then I might be willing to debate you. But as long as you manifest that kind of an attitude, no, it's not going to happen. And, somebody sent me a link just the other day to Jason DaCosta, the head of the Israel-only movement. Oh, he was bragging about how Don Preston and William Bell just will not debate him. And I'm trying to remember the name that he had for you. I've forgotten the name that he had for you, but it was, it was nasty, was, just one insult after another, one misrepresentation of what we believe after another, what have you. And I listened to about 15, maybe 18 minutes, maybe 20 of his presentation, and I turned it off. I just thought, I've got better things to do with my time than to listen to someone who 90% of the content of their lesson is nothing but insults, and it's arrogance, and it's condescension, and it's name-calling. No, I have no interest in that. The Bible says the child of God must not strive, but be gentle toward all men, and humility, rebuking those who contradict themselves. This is a paraphrase, of course, of 2 Timothy chapter 2, 24 and following. And, when you're the only one in a debate that is exhibiting any Christian decorum, then, well, there can be a good result of that, but it can also be counterproductive. And so you and I both, when we are aware of that kind of nonsense on the part, in the heart, in the mannerisms of the other person, we just refuse to debate them. Not going to give a platform for someone to get up and manifest their ungodliness, and all in the name of debate, braggadocio, what have you. So anyway, that's kind of where things are, and nonetheless, in spite of all of that, really, really wonderful things are happening. That's a very encouraging. On the one hand, to hear what they did with the video of the debate it's so disheartening to think that people, those who claim to be Christians, can be so dishonest, dishonorable, to purposely cut out content from your speeches, I mean, number one, it says volumes. They know they don't want their own audience listening to what you had to say. If that's not revealing, I don't know what is. And so it's disheartening, and yet it's revealing all at the same time. So we keep on plugging on. We hope and we pray that the news of the debate, as it continues to get out, and as you go ahead and post it on YouTube with the material that you can add that you know had been deleted, then the wonder and the marvel of YouTube and Facebook, they might have been able to cut those minutes out of the video of the debate, but they can't prevent you from publishing it around the world and telling the world, here is the material I presented in the debate, during the debate, and for some reason, those brethren felt this material was so powerful that they felt compelled to cut it out. And that will have an impact on lots and lots of people. So, much good may come from it.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that it was just editing mistakes at this point. You know, I don't want to be I'm hopeful that that's all it was, and we'll see. However, what comes out of the remaining files that will be sent.
Well, William, you know me. I happen to be a little bit paranoid and a little bit pessimistic about the shenanigans that our brethren can pull sometimes. And so I will join you in that hopeful optimism, all the while going, yeah, well, okay, maybe. So anyway, all right. Well, we need to get back to Ezekiel chapter 44 and our discussion of the Messianic temple. And I've got to share with you twice over on YouTube over the last 2 weeks. I've had one individual. He's a partial preterist, and I must say he was very respectful in his exchange. He disagreed with what I was saying. His arguments were not good at all. And yet he made this statement. And he said some things about the Messianic temple. And he said, in his opinion, that this is not good news. I just got a text from my wife that said they're going to have to keep Lance overnight. So that's not good news, but hopefully they're being cautious with him. And, this was supposed to be outpatient, even though it was 4 hernias. He was supposed to be home by now.
Mm-hmm.
So, we'll just have to have that in prayer and hope and pray that the night goes well. So, anyway, this individual was talking about the fact that the Messianic temple has been established. He agrees with us. It's one of those type of things, William, where he went down a very short list of things that he agreed with us, those of us who are preterists. And yet then he said, well, but the planet Earth has got to be renovated. Material creation has got to be restored to the Edenic, utopia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And 2 Peter chapter 3 has got to be fulfilled literally, physically. And then he turned around and he said, but I agree with you that the Christian age has no end. And I sat there and I read that and I thought, okay, you just agreed that all of the following tenets, elements are fulfilled. We're in the new creation. We're in the age to come, but we're not in the age to come. Obviously you don't have a concept of the already but the not yet that honors the not yet being imminent. But you believe that the Messianic temple has been established. You don't believe that the Christian age will ever end and yet you believe in the end of time. How in the world does that work? I mean, to me, William, this is some of this stuff that we have said at different times. Some of our opponents seem to just make up their arguments as they go along. And I mean, we are literally witnessing the adversaries of covenant eschatology make up brand new arguments that you cannot find. You can't find them in the commentaries. You can't find them in the creeds. You can't find them in debate books. But in order to discount and in order to supposedly refute covenant eschatology, they're making up absolutely brand new arguments. And so I said all of that to segue back into our study of the Messianic temple. How can you say that the Messianic temple has been established and it's an everlasting temple that shall never be destroyed, never pass away? That's the church of the living God. And then turn around and say, time's got to end and the earth's got to be renovated, and we're going to have a utopian world where there is no sin, there is no gospel, therefore, there is no evangelism. Those are self-contradictory views. And William, if you wouldn't mind kind of picking up from there, let me correspond with my wife just a moment here about our son.
Okay. All right. Very good. Yeah. What Don was saying is so very true that the contradictions that are presented sometimes when there are either attempts to refute what we're saying or they are attempting to make these arguments. They argue on the one hand that all things are fulfilled, and then they come back and have arguments that indicate that they are not. This happened even during the debate with the gentleman I was discussing with. There was a question, and I may have mentioned this before, but he received a question from the floor on Matthew 24 and whether or not he believed that all of Matthew 24 was fulfilled. And his response to it was yes. And he was asked the question several times in order to make sure that it was very clear that the audience understood it, that he understood what was being said. And each time he responded yes. And later, when, of course, I addressed that during the discussion and pointed out his admission and the implications of it. But later on,
I'm sure you did.
Yeah, of course. Later on in a writing, the guy comes back and he says, well, okay, all of Matthew 24 has been fulfilled, but when did the lightning appear? We have no record of that.
Oh my
and
goodness.
that's the kind of logic and reasoning that we find oftentimes in the type that you were talking about. It looks like you're back, so I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Well, yeah, he was obviously grasping at straws there, and I'm reminded, Kenneth Gentry recently wrote 4 articles attacking my new book, Watching for the Parousia, where Jesus' apostles confused, and this gets to the issues about not only making up new arguments, but as you know, I coined a Latin term that's not a Latin term years ago, argumentum ad desperatum. And that means, in my definition of it, and it's my term, okay, no, it's not Latin, but it's my term. But what I mean by that is it's an argument from desperation. That when they can't argue from text, when they can't argue exegetically with sound hermeneutic, they literally make up an argument and they interject that argument into the text, claiming that this is actually what the text says. And this is what we encounter when we come to Ezekiel. When we talk about when we talk about the Messianic temple of Ezekiel 40 to 47, and we ask the questions, and folks, these are perennial, age-enduring questions. Is Ezekiel 40 to 47 truly about the Messianic temple, or was it predictive in highly stylized, highly metaphoric language of a literal edifice that they envisioned? Now, there are all sorts of difficulties with taking that view, mind you, but nonetheless, there's so many questions about Ezekiel 40 to 47 that as we began this study, I just openly said, I don't have all the answers for Ezekiel 40 to 47. Now, I know from other texts that are more clear, and as the old axiom goes, you allow clear text to interpret, unclear text. And so when we talk about some of the things that we find in Ezekiel 40 to 47 that seem unclear, if they are contradictory of New Testament statements that are very, very clear, then we have to come down finally and we have to say, which is exactly where I'm at, okay, I'm not exactly sure how to explain this text in Ezekiel, but I do understand the text in 2 Corinthians 6, for instance. I do understand the text in Revelation 21 and 22, which even though Revelation is an apocalyptic book, here are statements that are so concise, so clear, so non-apocalyptic, that we can set those statements against that in Ezekiel and say, okay, Ezekiel makes the following statements, Revelation makes the following statements. They do not seem to jive. Revelation is very, very clear about what's going on. So I'm going to take Revelation as the explanatory passage. Or I'm going to use 2 Corinthians chapter 6 as the explanatory passage that says any application of Ezekiel 44 or 40 to 47 that violates 2 Corinthians 6 or Ephesians chapter 2 or 1 Corinthians 3, etc., etc., any interpretation of Ezekiel that violates those texts is wrong. Because these texts in Ephesians, Corinthians, Revelation are non-prophetic, they're non-apocalyptic, they're non-metaphoric in the ultimate sense. So, yeah, we can deal with that stuff. But to make up brand spanking new arguments in order to counter the very clear-cut testimony of Scripture is counterproductive. And let me give an illustration. I made the point a few moments ago that Kenneth Gentry recently wrote 4 articles attacking my brand new book, Watching for the Parousia, Were Jesus' Apostles Confused? Kenneth Gentry makes an argument. It is his foundational argument, William, and I don't know if you've read any of my arguments in response to him yet or not, but Kenneth Gentry makes the argument that where Preston and preterists go wrong is in not realizing that while in Matthew 23:37 Jesus spoke of Jerusalem and the temple, and that prediction of the destruction of the city and the temple elicited a response from the apostles for them to begin showing Jesus the size, the glory, the beauty of the stones of the temple. And they then asked Jesus, or Jesus responded to them, showing him the beauty of the temple stones. And Jesus said, do you not see all of these things? The time is coming in which not one stone shall be left standing on top of another. And the apostles immediately responded by saying, tell us, when shall these things be? What shall be the sign of your coming in the end of the age? And so Kenneth Gentry says, Preston's problem, the problem of the preterists, they failed to realize that Jesus was not focused on the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. The apostles were not focused on or concerned with the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. Jesus was only talking about the destruction of the temple, not the city. And the apostles were only asking about the destruction of the temple, not the city. Well, you know, William, I've read an awful lot of commentaries on the Olivet Discourse, as you have. I have never in my life read a single commentary or commentator who ever said that the exclusive focus in Matthew 24:2 in Jesus' prediction was the temple and had nothing to do with the city. I have never read a single commentator suggest, say, imply that the apostles were asking about nothing but the destruction of the temple and that they were not concerned in any way, shape, form, or fashion with the destruction of the city. So I will ask you, William, are you aware of any commentator that you have ever read that divorces and dichotomizes between the apostles pointing out the stones of the temple, Jesus saying, not one stone should be left here standing on top of another? Have you ever read a commentator said, now Jesus was not concerned about the fate of the city here. He's only concerned about the fate of the temple. And are you aware of any commentator who says, suggests, implies, etc., that the apostles were not concerned in any way with the fate of the city? They were only concerned with the fate of the temple.
I've read nothing that even hints at such an idea. It doesn't exist as far as I know. And if it does, that would probably be one of the most bizarre things that you will ever read, because all of the information that's out there regarding the destruction of the temple are likewise in the same context and deal with the subject of the destruction of the city. So no, I haven't run across anything like that. I mean, it would be a shock for me to find that, you know, I do hear people say that, you know, you may talk about all things being fulfilled and saying, well, that's different from the destruction of the temple. And, you know, they'll say the coming is different from the destruction of the temple, but I've never seen them try to separate the fall of the temple and the city at all.
Yeah, and here's the interesting thing, and by the way, I point this out in the article that I posted on my website this morning. Kenneth Gentry, in his own book, in one of his own books, takes note of Jesus' discussion concerning the abomination of desolation and the ensuing great tribulation. And he says, essentially, to paraphrase, some might think that this is a focus strictly on the temple and not the city, but that is not tenable. That is not justifiable. There are several reasons why it's more than a discussion of the temple and is inclusive of Jerusalem. So, needless to say, when I found that quote, I'm going, oh boy, oh my goodness, this may come in handy. So on the one hand, Kenneth Gentry has this argument that says Jesus only predicted the destruction of the temple and not the city. The apostles only asked about the destruction of the temple and not the city. And then we have the same Kenneth Gentry arguing that while some may argue that it's just the temple and not the city, that there are reasons for rejecting that view taken from the text of Luke 21, which of course is the Olivet Discourse. And so, I'm sorry, there could not be a clearer, more undeniable, more irrefutable, more clear-cut demonstration of Kenneth Gentry versus Kenneth Gentry if you asked him to make two statements that would contradict each other. If you asked him to make two statements that would contradict each other, guess what? I would choose these statements. And yet, he claims this argument that he has come up with. And oh, by the way, let me make this further point. If he made the argument once, he makes it 10 times in his 4 articles. Over and over and over and over again, Kenneth Gentry says that Don Preston and preterists stand against the universal consensus of scholarship. And Yet here is Kenneth Gentry, who has literally invented out of thin air an argument on Matthew 24, 2 and 3, that no scholar in history, unless I missed one, hey, you know what? It's certainly possible that I have missed a commentator somewhere written at some time who made Gentry's argument. I mean, I haven't read every single commentator and commentary that's ever been written, and I would never claim that I had. But out of the multitudinous commentaries that I have read, I have never read one, just like you, William, that has even remotely suggested the position that Kenneth Gentry is taking. So, on the one hand, Kenneth Gentry chides and condemns preterists, and particularly Don Preston, for taking a position that the universal consensus of scholarship disagrees with, and yet he has invented an argument unknown to the universal consensus of scholarship. Now, he called me arrogant, inventive, and innovative for arguing like I do. And yet, once again, he has literally invented an argument that is innovative, unknown, and therefore unorthodox. It's certainly not creedal. It's not in any of the early church fathers that I'm aware of. I've been looking, haven't found it. And so apparently, according to Mr. Gentry, it's okay for Kenneth Gentry to create an argument that is unknown in the entire history of the universal consensus of scholarship. And it's okay for Kenneth Gentry to stand against the great majority of scholarship, for instance, on the dating of Revelation and the identity of Babylon. And by the way, I stand with Kenneth Gentry on that issue, as you do, obviously. So it's okay for Kenneth Gentry to stand outside of orthodoxy, to stand outside the creeds, to stand outside of church history, but it's not okay for Don Preston, William Bell, and the preterists to do so. That's the kind of inconsistency that we find in an awful lot of those who stand opposed to covenant eschatology. On the one hand, they like to scream bloody murder that we are not creedal, that we violate church history, that we stand against scholarship. But then when you start pointing out how they violate those very things, then that's different. It's okay to differ sometimes. It's okay to differ on some issues. It's okay to differ on a lot of issues as long as you're orthodox. Well, how much of orthodoxy do you have to disagree with before you're unorthodox? Oh, they get to determine that. They're the judges of that, not the preterists. That's how inconsistent they are. So, with all of that said, you see, we swing back and we segue back to the difficulties of Ezekiel chapters 40 through 47. And by the way, William, I don't think I ever asked you if it's your opinion. This literally is not a, okay, I'm going to try to entrap William here type of question. It's a legitimate question. Have you decided in your own mind whether or not Ezekiel 40 to 47 was describing, in highly metaphoric, most of the time, highly wrought, hyperbolic language, trying to describe some kind of a literal temple that might possibly be built or rebuilt, or have you taken the view that Ezekiel 40 to 47 is in fact messianic? Or a mixture of both?
You know, I would say that I lean toward it being messianic. However, I've seen a few things in Scripture where they would lend themselves to possibly a mixture of both. And, that could be the case here. I want to study it further to see if I could be persuaded of that. My just leaning at this time is that it focuses on things Messianic, but that is because of certain language that I've looked at in the in these chapters. But again, there are some things that makes you go, makes you question it a little bit. So I think the next time I go through it and study it, I'm going to at least have my mind open to whether or not there are some things that could apply in a historical sense, as well as transcend that into something spiritual. And that's not far-fetched from things that we find in Ezekiel as well. When you're looking at chapter 37, for example, I think there's some indications of those, that methodology even there, even though there's no way you could pin chapter 37 down to just a historical fulfillment. So I'm willing to look at it, is what I'll say at this point.
Well, as usual, William Bell and I are kind of on the same page. We find ourselves being that way on many, many occasions in which we haven't discussed the issues among ourselves. We haven't really dug into it between the two of us and discussed it between the two of us. But we've done our own independent study, and we both come to the same, essentially the same position. So I'm not surprised to hear you say that, because really that's where I'm at this point, because these chapters contain a lot that really lends itself to the Messianic application. There's some of it that you look at it and you say, that cannot be Messianic. If a person takes a Messianic application of this text, it's going to violate specifically the book of Galatians and Paul's discussion of circumcision, and we'll get into that next week, ladies and gentlemen. But there are some aspects of the book of, Ezekiel 40 to 47, that if a person tries to take them in a Messianic application of the kingdom of God, then they run smack dab into the New Testament and Pauline statements, Johannine statements, statements by James, and what have you, that simply that you can't conflate them. You cannot harmonize them. They're statements that stand in opposition to one another. So you come to a position, this is where I am, that you say, well, it would appear then that this statement over here in Ezekiel must be, in some sense, of a historical situation. And that other aspects of this pericope, these chapters, must be taken in some way in a messianic sense. Is it type? Is it antitype? It's possible. I am very, very unsettled on it. I told somebody on YouTube just the other day, William, I've forgotten now what the question was, but I made the comment, you know what? I don't have an answer for this. I'm unsettled on this, and so I don't know how to answer it. And I had a couple of people post in the comment section, it is so refreshing to hear somebody like you say you don't know everything. I'm going, dude, you don't realize how much I don't know. You don't know how much I realize how much I don't know. Every single day when I pick up the commentators and I pick up, or maybe I pick up the lexicons and I start studying, I pick up the Greek grammars and I start studying, and I don't do that nearly enough on the Greek grammars, but nonetheless, I do it occasionally. And so just scholarly articles, I love to be able to call Brother Dallas Burdett out of Alabama and draw on his scholarship. He has taught Hebrew and Greek at the university level. He's 86 years old, but he's sharp as a tack and extremely, extremely well read. And so it's you sit and listen to him develop some of this stuff especially from the Greek or the Hebrew, and you're going to go, oh, I'm so dumb. But one thing I am tonight is out of time. And William, it's great to be with you. I want to wish you, Leora, and your wonderful family. Please give my love to your entire family. Tell them hello for me, and wish them all a Merry Christmas for me. And ladies and gentlemen, to those of you who are in our listening audience, William and I want to wish you the very merriest of Christmas. Please be safe, stay healthy, and with that I will say good night and God bless.
Thank you for joining the Two Guys in a Bible radio broadcast. On behalf of Dunn Preston and myself, we'd like to say have a very pleasant day and may God bless. Until next time, we'll see you on Fulfill Radio, a voice you can trust.